you really do show that acting, or in your life, in your career, the evolutionary process of it. Like, there's just so many things that make up not only who you are, I guess, as a person, which is great to see, but who you become as an actor. And it just flows from beginning to end in the book too. So it's
Oh,
almost
thanks.
like, what's cool about it is almost like, oh, what's the recipe for a Tim Matheson? Oh, I have it right here. I could make my own Tim Matheson. I just have to get everybody.
Dystopia tonight. Dystopia tonight.
I'm ready. Yeah. That way, I mean, I don't want to miss any of the good stuff. I am, dude. I just want to tell you, and I know this is one of those things where, like, I'm sure you're used to hearing it or whatever.
Now you're going to lie a bunch. So go ahead. I mean,
no.
Oh, I love you, man. Man, I've seen 9 things you've done. What the fuck?
Well, now I'm just gonna say, you know what? I'm over it.
Okay, yeah. And thanks so much for the interview. Bye, Tim. Get the fuck
yeah,
out.
Exactly. And now we're done. No, dude. I'm like, it's one of those things where, like, I've gotten a chance to interview a lot of people that I've, like, really admired and loved and respected and stuff like that before. This is like, I'm just genuinely, like, excited to have you on, because I mean, as far as, like, which by the way, this negates everybody else I've had on, because I swear to God, I love my guests.
Yeah,
but
fuck
like
them.
For me, yeah, you're right. You know what? You're absolutely right. But, like, it's one of those things where, just like, for me, and obviously for everybody who loves and respects you, like, I mean, Johnny Quest, Leave It to Be, and then Up, man. Like, I don't remember, for me as a kid watching reruns and stuff and just watching Johnny Quest, a time where you were not involved in some part of my entertainment culture or whatever. Because it's one of those things where, like, you're watching West Wing as an adult, right? And then you're like, and for me, as somebody who's loved comedy, and I'm a comedian, I've been doing it for 20 years and all that other stuff, I genuinely love, if I see somebody I like to do almost what you're saying in your book and stuff too, where it's like, I want to know more about that person. So then as a kid, I'm watching West Wing and I'm like, this guy's fucking awesome or whatever. And then you're like, holy shit, he's been in, there's just it's such a good, it's such a weird hook, because I have this thing with animation too, which why I love that I loved Johnny Quest. I watched the old one and then the new one when I was
way
like
ahead
a bit
of its
older.
time. It was so far ahead of its time. It was like almost, it wasn't manga, but it was just like, it was, it wasn't a comic. It wasn't cartoons. It wasn't the Flintstones. It wasn't Jetsons or anything, which is why I think it didn't last more than a season on the air, because, like, what is this? And the kids are all in bed by the time we came on. So it was like, okay.
Yeah, exactly. I think there was this thing, and I wonder if you'd noticed it too, where, because for a while when people were doing animation, or actors were doing voices, you didn't really, it wasn't a big deal. You know what I mean? Like, it was kind of like they were the last part of the thing, or maybe actors at the time didn't really consider it to be a prestigious or exciting thing. You know what I mean? So it was like, oh yeah, Zsa Zsa Gabor and Bob Newhart did the voice of but it's really on the bottom of the thing, right?
When I got in there and I got in the studio and I got to know all those people, I couldn't believe how rich they were.
Yeah.
I mean, Don Messick lived in Santa Barbara. They would send a car for him in the morning, and he would just go from session to session to session all day long, and then turn around and go back to Santa Barbara at night. And I worked with Mel Blanc, but they were, and Dawes Butler and June Foray, and they were just brilliant artists. It's like, I don't know how they did it. I could barely do my own voice. Every now and then they'd ask me to do another character, so I do so. And then by the next time the dialogue came up for that character, I'd forget the voice.
Right?
And they'd play it back for me. They were very generous, but these guys they created a full, vivid character.
Yeah.
With around a voice, a dog's voice, a cat's voice, whatever.
Yeah.
It was astonishing. And they made a fortune.
Right. Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing that was crazy to me. I'm like, how are these guys not more like but I don't know if they liked being like
Oh
not
yeah,
less well. Yeah, they did.
they
Okay.
did. I mean, because they had a lock on a segment of the industry that, they would do voiceovers in commercials and not cartoon necessarily,
Mhm.
just straight voice. A guy named Marvin Miller who was in The Millionaire, and
Okay.
he had the first gull wing Mercedes I ever saw, where the doors came up,
Yeah, yeah.
sideways, and it was like, who can afford a car like that? Oh my god! This guy, and they were so talented, and many of them came out of radio, so there was
Alan
that
Reed.
link to the old days, And
Yeah.
as a kid, I even did a radio show with the sound effects guy right there, making slamming doors and
Wow.
doing footsteps
Right, right, right.
around a gunshot, and it was insane. And I was fortunate enough to start that young, and so I had a toe in the old days, and it
Right.
connected like with Lucy and those people all the way
Yeah.
back to vaudeville. It was amazing.
Right. Yeah. And then you were talking about working with Alan Reed and stuff like that too. And I just remember the first time I saw Alan Reed, it was on the Dick Van Dyke Show, right? Like a live, like an actual, because he
Right?
was, did you ever see that episode? Which I think it was
I don't think I
called,
did.
oh God, it was such a great episode, but I think it was called like, uh the auction or something like that too, because they were doing research for the Alan Brady show on what
Right?
an auction was like. So they go there and Alan Reed's the auctioneer. And once you connect those dots, because it's his voice, he's great. But I was sitting there and I'm going, I fucking know that. And I'm like, that's Fred Flint. But he looks like him too. Like he could have been a live
Yeah, yeah.
action, and it was just incredible to see. So these guys, like, I love that that world is so interesting to me because it's like you know, there's so much depth to it, so much talent that goes into it, but it's almost like an underground thing where like
It
unless
is.
you're involved in it.
It is. It's still. I mean, it still is. I've done a couple of. I did a recurring character on Scooby Doo, and that
Nice.
there are still those younger actors that are around that are voice actors that can
Mhm.
create dogs and cats and animals and just
Yeah.
five different male or female voices or whatever. And but most of the times now, especially the Pixar and the big animation films, they're all stars.
Right.
And but we recorded it all together like a radio show
Right.
with eight of us or six or eight of us standing in front of microphones at facing the control room where Joe Barbera was directing, and we would just play it like a play. And
Yeah.
it was so much fun. It was a great entree for me into the business.
So that's interesting though, because that I feel like nowadays, I mean, maybe even more post COVID or whatever. Now that we have the technology to kind of do it, I don't know if they're saving money, but I think it's less like people are collaborative in the same room together. But you got to actually do that. You actually got to play with people within the same room. Do
Yep.
you like that as opposed to doing it singularly, like on
Oh,
your own?
absolutely. Because
Yeah.
you're bouncing off of them. You're playing off their energy. It's like improv. It's like
Mhm.
all acting. It's family. You're together with the team, and
Right.
you say something, boom, it sparks something in me, and I say, and today I think you're it's also because they're all big stars. Their schedules just never sync up. I
Sure. Yeah.
mean, so you can't get Will Ferrell and Ryan Reynolds in the same room, the same time. Just can't
Right.
happen because he's doing
Right.
this movie, she's doing that one, and she's over here. And so I think that's one of the things that's kind of goofy about it. But
Yeah.
it still works. I mean, God knows we love those movies. I mean,
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it totally still works. And so I loved your book, by the way. This is I'm
thank
sorry I
you.
didn't take the posted notes out of it, but I'm going to
I
show it to
love
you right
that.
today. Yeah, yeah. This
See, now he's making me believe like he really read it. I love that. Just a bunch of
wouldn't it be
post-it
amazing if they were all blank, just the posted notes had nothing
That's
on them?
fabulous.
It looks like
I'm
it.
going to use that. I tell
Yeah.
you.
So like but what I thought was cool, one of the things I thought was very cool is that you kind of, I don't even know if you realized you did this, but you wrote very meta in a way, a book within a book, because all of those you knew, I mean, obviously it was a conscious thing to do, but I thought that was really cool and very unique um for my ADD brain, because for sometimes you're reading these things and you do have these questions where you're like, okay, they seem to have not skipped over, but like there's details. I want more details. But you actually had the foresight to put in separate boxes where it was like, like you said, like you had like an acting tip, basically. It would be like, like an actor's tip for this. And this is what actually went on behind the scenes there. And I'm like, when I got to the end of it, I was like, you could just literally take out all of those, put them in a whole other book because it's
Oh, good.
invaluable information.
Well, that
So
was it was the main thing that sort of inspired me to do it. I mean, there was a book I read called The Making of the Wizard of Oz by a woman named Algene Harmitz, and
Mhm.
she took all of the documents from MGM, all their files of the wardrobe, camera tests, actors, script, revisions, how many directors they had. They had 3 directors on The Wizard of Oz,
Wow.
and 2 of them got fired. But what happened was it was so, for a film student, like myself, somebody who just loved movies. I wanted to know how that happened, how they make that movie, how does it get done. That's what I wanted to do, and I started to do that about Animal House, and I actually started writing out myself because for me to watch John Landis, John Belushi, Doug Kenny, Harold Ramis, and Ivan Reitman, who were like the core group of men who changed the shape of comedy and film
Yeah.
back in the 70s, 80s, for where things took off from there. I just wanted to recount that. And then when I did it, the publisher said, "Oh, no, we like more, get more story of your life and all that." But I also wanted to bring that I called film school boot camp. I think that's that other little
Yeah. Film
sidebar
school boot
thing
camp. Yep.
is these are the lessons I learned, and I learned from people who were in vaudeville, and I
Hmm.
learned from, being on the set and making this stupid mistake and that stupid mistake, and here's things they don't teach you in film school.
Right.
They talk about an auteur, they talk about Truffaut and Bergman and Fellini, and it's great, and all that's really good to know.
Hmm.
But when you're an episodic director and you're 2 hours behind, and and the producer's looking at his watch and tapping it, what
Yeah.
the hell do you do, and how do you get out of this mess?
Exactly. And I that's the kind of stuff that I had Leno on one of the episodes of the show or whatever. We were talking about that kind of stuff, and then even I got to hang out with him. We were backstage, and we were like talking about how sometimes people go in their bios, or even when they're doing interviews, stuff like that, where they're like, so I was 5, and then I got my first Tonight Show, and you're like, what the fuck happened in the middle? Like, guy, you can't do that to people. And another thing I just love too is like, you really do show that acting, or in your life, in your career, the evolutionary process of it. Like there's just so many things that make up not only who you are, I guess, as a person, which is great to see, but who you become as an actor. And it just flows from beginning to end in the book too. So it's
Oh,
almost
thanks.
like, what's cool about it is almost like, oh, what's the recipe for a Tim Matheson? Oh, I have it right here. I could make my own Tim Matheson. I just have to get everybody back together. But it's so, so cool to see. And a couple of questions I definitely want to know, because I loved, first of all, the fact that you worked with all these legendary people: Lucille Ball, Jackie Gleason, Dick Van Dyke, who I'm a huge Dick Van Dyke
Oh
fan.
my God,
Um,
he's great.
he is, I mean, God, dude, like that guy is just top
Sweetest guy in the
tier.
world. Just
Oh,
always held, kept it light. Treated me and Gary Getzman played my brother.
mhm,
I'm 16 and Gary was like 13, and or I
mhm.
was 17 maybe, and treated us like members of the family, and was that because in those days the actors always stayed on the set. They didn't go off to their trailers. They didn't
Oh,
go off and do whatever else they did, somewhere else.
mhm.
They just were always around. Debbie Reynolds was playing ping pong with us, and he made us feel right at home and feel part of the process. It didn't talk down to us because we were kid actors. He was
Great.
great. I mean,
Yeah.
he's so brilliant. I mean, he's so
It's
brilliant.
it's one of those things that's so nice to hear. I mean, people always talk about separating the art from the actor, especially nowadays and stuff like that, and what you can do. But it is just genuinely awesome to hear that someone like that is just a great guy. You know what I mean? Like just
Yeah.
nice to get. That's always great. But and you had worked with all these people. The Jackie Gleason
Ah,
thing was awesome that you had worked with him. But also, I noticed that you talked about Clint Eastwood, and you talked about him not liking to rehearse. So, but one of the things that I know from showbiz history and stuff like that is Jackie Gleason. They always say was
never
notorious
rehearsed.
for not wanting to rehearse.
Never rehearsed.
Was that
Photographic memory, just did it.
that's what it was? It was photographic. So between those two, between Jackie Gleason's style of not rehearsing and Clint Eastwood's style of liking to say the line to be fresh to him, was there because the way people talk about Jackie was like never even bothered to look at the script until the day of, which may also be like Hollywood legend kind of exaggeration stuff, or maybe it was real. And then Clint Eastwood seemed to be, he just wanted to say the line fresh. Like, what were the, how do they compare as far as not wanting to do it the way normally it's
Well,
done?
I think part of it was Gleason probably came out of vaudeville. I'm guessing. I mean,
Mhm.
he just where you do 6 shows a day, and you get you develop you hone your skills so well.
Sure.
It's you're a comic. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like you could go out on stage and if your material is not working, you can just shift gears and you can make something happen. I
Sure.
mean, it's like and I think it's that skill of the toughness of it, of their upbringing and their training, I think, was what made Gleason what Gleason was. And
Mhm.
and sadly enough, when I did a series with Sam Kinison, and I just, it was called Charlie Hoover. It was on Fox. We only did, I don't know, 8 or 10 episodes and got
Right.
canceled because Sam was supposed to be my id. He was like Jiminy Cricket, and he would appear on my shoulder.
Mhm.
And they'd shoot him over against a green screen in the other part of the studio, and all by himself, not with anybody else around, no audience or anything.
Right.
And that's just death, because it's like, can you imagine the Honeymooners without an audience? Can you imagine the
Yeah.
Honeymooners with Jackie Gleason off by himself? I think Sam Kinison would probably still be alive if
Mm.
he had been able to find a character like Ralph Cramden
Yeah.
or the Jackie Gleason show. I would be able to do all those multiple characters, Reginald Van Gleason, all those things that Jackie did, because he had that same exuberance and that same boisterousness that Kinison had, and Kinison just had this heart, and I think that we would still have him if had he found that sort of outlet. But
Right.
I just think with Gleason, when I worked with him, he'd rehearse. I mean, he'd run through the lines with the people because it was what he was just taking a job. That's what it was. I mean,
Right.
it was this very silly little movie called How to Commit Marriage with Bob Hope
Yeah.
and Jackie and Jane Wyman. And um, he made his deal. Because he was only in there for like 3 weeks. He said, "What was the highest salary of any actor's been paid for 3 weeks? I want $1 more."
Wow.
That's it. That was Jackie. I
Genius.
mean, and he had his assistant, and but Clint knows who he is. He plays one thing. He's a brilliant film actor.
Right.
And I think he likes. He knows his lines. He knows, but
Mhm.
he likes that spontaneity. And he's
Yeah.
that way with. I mean, he's that way with other actors, and giving them their freedom to do whatever they want to do. I mean, I remember was it uh, um, Saul Rubinek's an actor who worked on The Unforgiven, and we went up to Clint the first day of shooting and said, I want to change this dialogue. I was thinking, I want to play it this way. I want to do this. And he goes, "You are the head of the acting department for your character. You can do whatever you want to do."
Wow. That's great.
And he said, "And if if you want to change dialogue, let me know. I'll have to okay that. But
Mhm.
you just I mean, 'cause once you're on the set, Clint loved you. He
Yeah.
just like you go, and but I think he just he likes the spontaneity and he'd always print rehearsals
Mhm.
when he was shooting with Meryl Streep in Bridges, Madison County. Something got knocked over in a scene. That's okay. Pick it up just like you would in real life. He played, leave it in the shot. What the
Yeah.
hell? I mean, because it just is more tangible and more real. And
Yeah.
all I think John Ford, I'd read, wouldn't even tell certain actors about the blocking in a scene if there was a crowded thing, because people are bumping into each other and getting, oh yeah, and then you got to cover and you got to,
Right.
and it's just realer. It's simple, because the more takes you do, the more stilted it gets, or the more
Mhm.
perfect I'll just hit this word or that word, and it's like that's boring.
Yeah.
In my book, that's kind of boring.
I agree. And like, so do you find that do you think like acting today has gotten away from that, or do you think it just depends and it varies between set to set, director to director, that kind of thing?
I think it's director to director,
Okay.
and like let's just say it was different on The West Wing.
Yeah.
You had better say exactly those words,
Mhm.
and like I once I added an to a scene I was rehearsing, on the West Wing where I had a huge long speech to a bunch of reporters. I was
Mhm.
gobbledygook, blah, 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 blah. And I was talking to this group of reporters and I went, and then turned to the other group of reporters and I added an, which was
Right.
being fed back to Aaron Sorkin's office, which I didn't know. The
Mhm.
camera and the sound was being fed back. So as I
Wow.
walked back to the trailer or the makeup to get, ready for the shot, Aaron comes on the set and I said, "Hey, Aaron." He goes, "Hey, Tim, keep the, that was good." And he'd hear everything. It was like he was about the rhythm of it, but very few writers, I think, have that ability in that ear. Whereas, like say
Yeah.
John Ford wanted the spontaneity. I remember there's a scene he had Henry Fonda in Young Mr. Lincoln talking to his mother, who was dying, or they were talking about something very touching. She said,
Mhm.
"Don't say the words. Don't say the words. Don't say the words. Just you're going to be here. You're going to be there. Okay, okay, okay." And action. And so
Wow.
the first time they said the words, they were just overwhelmed with the feeling.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's what that's about. I think in terms of but Lucille Ball, she knew you're going to do physical comedy. You better know what the fuck you're doing. You better
Right.
know this glass that I'm going to knock over on the third line had better be in position. And there was a prop guy under the sink popping toast up in a breakfast scene, and for her to grab in mid line, and he better hit his cue. And
Right.
she, I remember for whatever reason, she said there's 12 of us kids in it. She goes, "Always rehearse with your props." And it was like, okay, Lucy. And I realized as I started doing physical comedy, you had better, because if you're doing a scene and you got to think, oh, do I pick up the glass here or do I eat on that line? Then you're not in the scene anymore, and
Yep.
that's now you're in bad acting world.
Absolutely. And
So
that
those are the kind of things that I picked up as a kid. Fortunately, to work with those people.
Yeah. And you also like you make great comparisons between Lucille Ball and John Belushi's style in the terms of the book. But the cool thing about it is, and this is one of the things that I learned, doing stand up over the years too, because everybody tries to reinvent the thing that they're doing, and which is great because it's fun to kind of, experiment with stuff. But the core, it's funny because at the core, it has to, like, I don't remember who said it, but somebody said, you can do whatever you want as a stand up, but somewhere in what you're doing, Henny Youngman has to be involved. You have to, there's still the setup and the punchline. And you can tell, and that was the cool thing
Yeah.
about you when you connected the dots between Lucille Ball and John Belushi, where John, you said, was very much an improviser. And then that scene in Animal House when he's taking stuff off the thing, but you were also like very reminiscent to what Lucille Ball would have to
Yes.
go through in the
Yes.
timing and the precision. So I love the connecting the dots. And I
Oh, thanks.
also, oh yeah, it's this again, this is like I mean, people, let alone people should just read this to fucking figure out and piece together what they need to be paying attention to. Cause I'll be the first to say, I know I've done a little bit of acting stuff here and there. I've never felt like an actor. I just feel like a comedian. Like I always feel like a stranger in a very like, because here's the thing too. And I owe this, my friend and I were just talking about this the other day too, because we're both been doing stand up for a while, to, some success and other times not, but like, why not be honest? Fuck it. But
That's what makes it so wonderful is when you die, man, it toughens you up.
it
It's a
does.
full contact sport what you guys do.
Absolutely. And it makes you like, it's so funny too, because when I don't know if you've gotten this too at times, especially during the COVID, lockdown period where, you have this outlet as a performer and you do that, which makes you, you know, your ability to be normal around people who are not in this business work. When you don't have it, you're a bit of a maniac, and you're like not sure, like other people who don't see you in that light or talk to you are like, are you okay? And you're like, I've never been okay.
No,
It's no,
I'm not.
exactly. And
It's like I um I just admire so much what you guys do. I mean, and,
oh,
and
thank you.
gals do with the stand up. And I worked with Stephen Wright one time on an
Oh,
HBO show,
the
and I
best.
told him, I said, I don't know how you do it. I mean, I had thought once or twice about maybe trying a little stand up,
Yeah.
but it's just horrifying to me. And he goes, I said, how do you do it? And he goes, well, I have three classes of material. I have the best, which is A.
Hmm.
the next best, which is B, and then the lowest class is C. So I come out, I give them C. If they laugh, that's all they get. I may give them a little B, maybe a pop up,
Yeah.
up, So I go out and C doesn't work, and then I got to start popping the B, and if the B starts to work, then that's all they get. But if
Right.
I go out with C and nothing and B nothing, and then I go to A and nothing, he said I get off stage. I mean, it's like, but I saw okay, there's a technique there. I get it. I see
Yeah.
it. But it. But that's why the world of stand up. I mean, is vaudeville. And it's
Yeah.
like you are tough. When I worked with Lucy, I saw her do something backstage, which at the time kind of really, I was surprised.
Mm.
She'd often have a lot of people around from vaudeville who, weren't obviously as successful as her, and they needed to work, and so they'd get a line here, a line there, or they'd have a small part, and so they could keep their medical insurance on SAG or something.
Okay.
And so I'm backstage with her and Gail Gordon, a wonderful actor from Armis Brooks and a great comic actor, and Lucy, and this older woman who had one line. And we're all standing back there, and this woman is making an entrance through a door, and then, and goes outside, so it goes out front to the audience, says her line, and then makes an exit. And Lucy looks at me and Gail and says, $20, she blows her line just before she goes out.
Wow.
And this woman looks at Lucy, and I thought, oh, that's so mean. I thought, what was that about? Woman looks at Lucy, here's her cue. She walks out front, bang, nails the line, turns around, comes back out, and sticks her hand out, because I think what I learned from that is, don't be such a sissy. I mean, it's full contact.
Yeah.
This business, it's like athletes are that way. Comics are that way. I'm sure you guys are ruthless with each other, right?
We will literally before a show, and not in support. It's weird. It's supportive, but not supportive. But literally right before somebody's going on stage, and be like, "Oh man, you're gonna fucking eat it. Oh, this face, and like, and we'll do that. Oh, you're gonna fucking bomb so bad." And then not to bomb, but it also just gets you out of your head too, because you're like, you motherfucker, right before
that's what she was doing, man. That's exactly when I got it. Yeah. And that's what you guys do. And that's what football players, baseball players do. You say, oh boy, you sure can't hit the curve today, can you?
Yeah.
I mean, really.
I have a buddy of mine who's an actor, great actor, and has been doing comedy for way longer, but he was like my mentor when I first did stand up. He had come to talk to a bunch of comedians, which is invaluable. You know what I mean? And it was one of those things where, there's like 30 people in a room, I swear to God, this is true. He did not try to build. He was hired by the club to come and talk to us. He did not give a fuck. He went, if you don't like wearing the same clothes, living out of a suitcase, eating bagels off but me, I was 20 and I was like, no, yes, all of what you just said. So he liked me, and then I kept in touch with him, and now we talk like every day on the phone, like 2
Oh my God, that's great.
Yeah, and he's the best. But he had, he knows I'm going to do a gig, and like literally I'll have my phone, and right before I go on, he'll just go, "Don't suck, you fucking moron." And I'm just like, I'm like, does he have a camera? How does he know? But he's been doing it forever, and it's great.
Yeah.
What another thing that I really, I'm curious about, because you're writing something like this and you're piecing all this kind of stuff together, and I'd love to know, I always want to know if somebody is in the moment and they're realizing this in real time, right? Like, so when you were, becoming an actor, gathering all your information, all your pieces, was this connecting in your brain at the time that, one, I'm living through an amazing period with amazing people and I'm learning all this stuff? Or was this also just something that you happened to realize later on and connected these dots? Because it really is a very woven tapestry of different skill sets, different eras in the business, and then how they all impacted you. So was this happening to you in real time?
After the fact, because I always thought I was hanging on by a thread, because I didn't know if I was still going to be in the business tomorrow. Seriously, I mean, and it sort of keeps you on your toes. I mean, it's like I remember doing what was it called? Here's Lucy with Lucy Arnaz, the show I did later on, and I went out into one scene with Lucy's out there with Lucy Arnaz, and Lucille Ball she went up. Her eyes were just, she was nervous. She got too nervous and went up. and dropped through her line. And so we cut and we started over again. And she was fine. I thought, if Lucille Ball still gets nervous, what the
Yeah.
hell? It calmed me down. I just
Yeah.
thought, what the heck? What am I doing feeling nervous? But I was always, I think it was in retrospect, I learned a lot of lessons the hard way by making stupid mistakes. And, and to me, looking back at it, that this was my family, and oftentimes I didn't treat them as family because I'm an actor, and it's my craft, and
Right.
or
Right.
I'm a director, and it has to be perfect, and you got anybody who doesn't help me, you're fucking me, and I don't care. I'll just run over people to get a good film, and I
Right.
think you don't have to be that to get good work. You really, I learned that the hard way, and
Sure.
that really embrace the family, and and also like in the sort of the film school boot camp thing. Who do you want to kiss up to on the set if you're an episodic director? Is the cinematographer.
Oh,
They
really?
want you, he or she, they need to be your best friend because they can bury you. If you piss them off, oh, this is going to take an hour and a half to light this scene. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
And you go an hour and a half. I mean, we only got 20 minutes to shoot this. Well, you want to shoot it. Well, so
Wow.
those are the kind of things that I picked up the hard way
Right.
by by stepping on some toes. And but I think it came to me in retrospect. Um, and like I didn't start studying acting till I ran into a couple of scenes that I didn't know how to play. And I couldn't do
Okay.
them, and I had to like fake cry and act, like I was a junior high, like, "Ah," or whatever. It was like I went home so depressed and so ashamed that
Right.
I said, I'm either getting out of this business or I'm going to go to Lambda or RADA or, one of the great Juilliard or something. Of course, I didn't have the money to quit acting at that point. So I was under contract to Universal. And so I spent every day going to some new class: dance, fencing, vocal, voice, singing,
Mm.
Shakespeare, Stanislavski, Strasberg, whatever. I took it all. I improv, so
Right.
I had a sort of my college years were when I was under contract to Universal and I studied.
So, but I mean, through all that, when you were learning all that kind of stuff and practicing, I mean, it seems like you had drive from the very beginning to do this kind of stuff. Does that something that you just consider to be genetic, or something that you consider to be just, it was a necessity at the time? Like, because you had a very specific drive. I mean, it seemed like you did not stop moving, progressing, trying to, even with some setbacks like you were talking about. It seemed like you had them happen, and then immediately after that, there was something inside you that was just like, I'm going to try to book 10 more things. Fuck this thing. I went through this, whatever it is, but now I need to do more. That's a very unique work ethic.
I
Did
think you
that come
gotta,
from?
it's like if you bomb one night, in the first show,
Yeah.
you still do the second show. I mean, you gotta
Good point.
get out there. I
Yeah.
mean, you
Yeah.
can't let it. And I also, I got to, at an early age, realized that it was a business, and I had
Hmm.
a, I have, I'm not Laurence Olivier. I'm not that, there are people that are so gifted
Yeah.
and so just, Pacino and De Niro and, and you name them, and Daniel Day-Lewis, that
Mm.
I'm a craftsman, and so I learned that there's a business side of this entertainment industry that I better learn so I can get the
Right.
better agent. I can get, and I constantly was scouring. So it was sort of a split view of it, where I had to take care of the business side of it as well as the acting side of it,
Okay.
because without that, I wouldn't get the opportunities to get the shows that I wanted to do. Like Animal House, they didn't want me to audition. I met them, and my hair was down to here. I was, I've been doing Western. I think I just did The
Yeah.
Quest, Kurt Russell. See, no, he's a cowboy
Wow.
or a surfer. He's not preppy enough. No, we won't even let him audition. So I called in some favors, and I just said, let me get in the room. If I tank in the room, I don't care. Just
Right.
give me a shot. So they got me a shot, and I got to improvise with Peter Riegert, and we played around in it, and we got him laughing, which was the good
Yeah.
news.
Yeah.
And so I got the part, but it was, it's, I realized it's a business, and I had better focus on that as much as I
Yeah.
do about my craft, because
Right.
one doesn't go without the other.
No, absolutely. And I love the thing you said about the Lucille Ball being nervous thing, because I've talked about this before, but it's something that I think about consistently, especially before going on stage. Is, really, it's one of those. There's a couple. Normally, what's going on in my head before I go on stage is, where's the exit and can I run there? Who do you think you
Hey,
are?
really?
Oh my
Oh my!
God. Like it's just this internal thing of right before it's when once I'm on stage, everything feels fine. Everything comes back and it's normal and I'm having fun and I'm playing with everybody. But there's just something in the middle of that where my brain just goes, who do you think you're going to talk to strangers? Who the fuck do you think you are? It's a very weird, I don't know what's wrong with me. I think it's just this. It's just what we are. But
Yeah, I think you know what, everybody feels that. I mean, I think
yeah.
Maureen Stapleton, wonderful Broadway actress and film actress, said, I'm fine doing theater. I'd rather skip opening night because I'm throwing up in a bucket over there before I make my entrance.
Yes.
It's just so intense.
Yeah. Somebody told me that that doesn't end, which is great to hear and also just terrifying at the same time. But it makes you feel oddly comfortable. And I was watching this documentary like years ago. I don't know what it was, but it was about Rodney Dangerfield. And I don't think it
Ah,
was the bet, right? If you have any stories of him, I'd love to hear. But I was watching it was Robin Williams was talking about being at Dangerfields back in the day. He got to go and whatever when he was younger, and he's standing next to Rodney. Rodney's about to go on stage, in his robe and shit. And he looks over at Rodney, and Rodney looks back at Robin and goes, "Look at me, I'm sweating. I own the club." And I I think about that every time. This
oh
guy had
no.
his own club, and he was still like, it's beautiful. It makes
That
you
was
happy.
when I saw because we had the same agent for a while, and I saw him in
Oh,
Vegas, and he said, he goes, "What am I sweating for? I already got this job." And
yeah,
when he's on stage, right? But with a buddy of mine, the guy who played D-Day, Bruce McGill in
Mhm.
Animal House, who's been in a million things, a wonderful
Yeah,
actor, and we'd all gone to Vegas with our friends, and we were 10 of us watching Rodney. And Bruce had been drinking, and he had to take a leak, and Rodney's on. And I mean, we're like 30 minutes into his act, and
yeah.
Bruce just he gets up and heads towards the door, and Rodney just stops, and he goes and he watches him go, and he says, "Where are you going?" And he goes, "Well, man, I'm sorry. I've been drinking so much. I got to take a leak. I know it's embarrassing. I'm sorry." And he goes, and Rodney didn't say anything. And Bruce exits, and he goes, and Rodney just looks at the audience, and goes, "Now we can be ourselves." And Bruce is standing outside, and he
Oh.
hears this roar, and it's just. It was nobody was as good as Rodney. I mean, he was. Oh my God.
I know. I
Oh,
wish I got to. I mean, it's one of those dudes that I wish I got. I wish I got to meet him. I wish I got to meet Robin. There's just so many that
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and you got to. I mean, when I got to that section, it's one of those things where like I usually wind up asking guests, especially actors and stuff like that, just about comedy in general. Like you said, you thought about dabbling and maybe doing stand up, never did, but like I just have a genuine curiosity about the orbit that everybody kind of floats in. And you'd gotten to work with John Candy, Sam Kinison. Like I got to that chapter and I was like, holy, and like he's already answering what I want to know. But like the John Candy thing was so cool to me too,
Uh,
because again, this is one of those guys that I can't get enough of hearing about just what a mensch the dude was, and what he was, reflected back on people. Almost like, you know, um like there was a Steve Martin documentary that I saw recently or whatever, and he's talking about this scene. It's on Apple, I think.
oh,
You know what I'm talking about,
yeah.
man. I mean, and that just hits you.
Well, they were in bed. I think wasn't it Planes, Trains, and Automobiles? Was
Planes,
that?
trains, and automobiles, and it's actually at the end when he's talking about, because apparently
Oh,
it was cut. Like it was like a long speech where he's talking about
oh,
what
right.
act. And Steve Martin starts to break up and stuff like that. And it's just like, oh my God, all these years later. And then your recollection of Candy and hanging out with him and what he'd done for you and stuff.
Well, he was. Because I was in that movie in 1941, Spielberg's movie,
Yeah.
and
Great movie, by the way.
yeah, I think I mean, Steven has a hard time making a bad movie. It just
Yeah.
because he risks pushing the edge of the envelope. He tries different genres. Okay, I'll try
Mhm.
big. This is my mad, 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 mad world. Okay,
Yeah.
and let's see what happens.
Right.
And he'll do a horror movie. He does everything. And so I was basically he said, there's two parts I'd like you to play, either one, your pick. and I read the script, and there were, all these guys running around in the tanks and all that stuff on Hollywood Boulevard, and then there was me and Nancy Allen, and that, in our own little sort of sub movie, and I
Yeah.
think they could have cut that whole scene. I mean, that whole part of the movie out, and I said, I'd rather do that because it allowed me to be realer, and the comedy was
Mhm.
the story between us,
Yeah.
and so but just we were there every day and hanging out. John and I just, we just started riffing, and John Candy and I just started riffing, and we came up with some. Well, it was in poor taste, but I like, in the tougher times of our careers, I'm going to open an acting school via mail.
Right.
But then it'd be an internet acting school where I'll teach you to
Right.
act over the internet. It's like,
Yeah. Which people are
and
doing.
in any language,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. So, I mean, and we'd always do, commercials for that. La Escuela de Acting de Tim Matheson, So it was, but he was also, as I found with all the great comics I worked with, they had such a heart.
Yeah.
Kinnison. That's why I thought Kinnison, he was the Jackie Gleason of our generation. They just didn't have a place to put him. He
Right.
was bored, I think he was just bored. He just kept doing that. Oh, it was too much.
Yeah.
He needed that other outlet, and it was tough. It was too bad. It was
Yeah.
it was a great loss.
That's a thread that I've noticed too when you've been talking about like that kind of stuff, is that there was always like the heart to these guys, and they're really cared about the work and the character work and all that other stuff too. So it's a shame, but I guess that's the nature of the business. Because I mean, from what I gathered from this is, and I'm curious how you kept a level head and you seem to avoid most of the pitfalls of maybe necessarily like heavy drug use, that
Oh,
kind of a
I
thing.
fell into all the pitfalls.
You
And I
did,
was
but you
lucky enough
can't.
to climb out. Well, not heavy. I mean, what it got me was, let's talk cocaine.
Yeah.
In the late 70s, 80s, early 80s, it wasn't bad for you. This was
Okay.
like, a new drug for actors. It was like, this is not bad for you. I can, wow. And you
Wow.
feel so good. And it's like, really, and I can drink 7 martinis and do some cocaine, and I'm not even drunk anymore. It's like, this is wow. Who would not want
Right.
to do this? And it was like, then I, then I finally, I didn't do that much.
Mhm.
It would last me forever and ever. But then I just kept thinking, how often did I think about it and not do it? But how often did I think about it? I thought about it. I think I'm thinking about this way too much. It's like, I'm not doing it,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I'm thinking about doing it. And so that's an addiction.
Right.
That's totally, I mean, whether you do it or don't do it, if that's all you're thinking about, that's an addiction.
Right.
So,
Right.
I sort of just, I would run, I'd flirt with this and flirt with that. And then I just would just say, heck with all of it.
That's incredible fucking willpower, though. Like that is, especially when it's around you all the time. You know what I mean? Like that is, because I remember you saying in the book that you were considered Belushi's clean friend, which you weren't.
That's
That you were
right.
like, yeah, which is it's impressive.
Well,
So
poor John. I mean, he had that sort of, everybody thought he was they thought he was Bluto. They thought he was
yeah.
he was this crazy guy from Saturday Night Live. They thought that's who he was.
Right.
And I think the tragedy of Saturday Night Live at that time was all these huge music acts were on there, and they're the ones that had the real drugs. The actors would
Right.
smoke a joint or something or have a drink or something, but then all of
Mhm.
a sudden you're hanging out with musicians, and then all this other stuff comes into the acting world, and I think that's where it sort of kind of the infusion of it was, because I'd
Yeah.
never heard about any of that stuff before that.
Did you ever have the feeling that you needed it to perform?
Oh God, no! I listen. I can't drink, smoke, nothing. And yet I know act. No, I know. I was way off.
Okay.
I'd lose my timing, I would get
Right.
distracted or something. But I know actors. I won't mention any names, but I was walking with a couple of friends of mine in New York City, and it was 6 o'clock. People are going to dinner before the theater, and these were actors going to be on Broadway that night,
Okay.
smoking a joint on their way to
Wow.
work. And it was like, Jesus God. I mean,
Yeah.
you guys are awesome, man. I could never do that. That
I
scares me to death.
It's so funny, but I know exactly. Like I can't. I learned. I think I did it like once before doing a show, and was like, I am. I thought I was that was the worst part, was thinking you're
You thought you were
killing.
great, right?
Oh my God. And then I watched the tape back and I was like, this is never going to happen again. But I don't know how people do it. I do the same thing where I'm like, I envy, how the fuck can you do it? But I've never, and I feel like such a, like a square, because I just don't, never go up with a beer, never do anything like that, never do anything before. And like recreationally fun stuff, you know what I mean? Like you would
Yeah,
do that
yeah.
kind of stuff, but could never do it for work stuff. It didn't fly.
I saw Frank. I saw Frank Sinatra 3 times in my life.
Wow.
When in the later years, I saw him once in Reno, twice in Vegas, and got to meet him once. And he drank through the whole thing. I mean, he was drinking Jack Daniels through the whole thing. But wisely, he had monitors all along the floor facing
Hmm.
him that had the lyrics of the songs on it. So if he had any doubt about what he was singing or what he, but it was part of his act. It was part of who Frank was,
Right.
and it was. But some people can just do it, and
Yeah.
the whole Rat Pack. I mean, they were, look at Dean. I mean, it's
Oh
like
yeah.
Dean Martin.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, this is going to sound fucked up, but I'm going to say it anyway. Or maybe we'll cut it. Who knows? No, I won't. But like, no, but it's one of those things where, like, sometimes I'll see. This makes me also sound like old man yelling at cloud shit too. But it's not even that. But like, it's just funny to me because you'll go, like I'll see like a musician or performer or whatever today that is be like, I have to, I'm too stressed. I've got to cancel a bunch of shit, or like somebody will be like, oh my God, I sucked singing the national anthem because I was drunk. But then you go and watch like Motley Crue and AC/DC, and I'm like, dude, those guys were performing on the ground. Like, you know what I mean? You're just like, what was like, are you kidding me? They were on everything.
Oh my
So,
God.
I just can't help but make that comparison in my head. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying
Well,
it
also
does cross
music.
my mind.
Music is one of those things that I don't know. I don't play music instruments, but
Hmm.
they've been known for using drugs
Yeah.
because they get into it loosens you up and it makes
Yeah.
so you get into the sound and the music and so maybe it's a different thing than acting and a God
Hmm.
I don't know about comedy. I mean, I hosted an evening at the Improv once, and I
Oh,
said, yeah, sure, I'll do it, and it was great. And then I was terrified because I thought, oh my God, I'm not an MC. I don't tell jokes. I don't.
right.
So I created a character of this guy Tim Matheson who was totally comfortable being it. And I said because they don't know I don't know how
That's
to do
brilliant.
this.
Right.
So I
Absolutely.
created this character who was comfy, I mean, I didn't do a cigarette or anything, but it was just
Yeah.
everything but, and it was just
Right.
like I had this character who could tell jokes and I went out and I got away with it. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
think I want to do that every week, but that's the only way I got through
That's genius, though. That's actually a great, great way to go about it. When
it.
you've got great improvisational skills and improvisational background and stuff too, but like, you know, do you find it difficult, or did you find it difficult when you were working? Because I know you're very like pragmatic about, you like, this is a business, I have to do my thing. But for somebody who's quick on their feet, did you find it a struggle at any point to like go like, oh, I wouldn't say it this way. I don't think my character would. I'm gonna try this and then see if it works, or were you just like, this guy's gonna hate me if I do it? I gotta stay. Because I know with Sorkin, you had said like, no, you pretty much
Oh yeah.
have to, but you did do that, add that beat, and he liked it. But for other
I
stuff too, like, were you ever like, oh no, I can't do it this way?
Well, I think you're always trying to do that. The worst example of that was I was cast in a Rhoda show, an episode of Rhoda.
Oh yeah, road is
Yeah,
great.
yeah, and Valerie Harper, and it was great,
Mhm.
so I you go in on day one, and you sit down and have a table read,
Yeah.
and the character was a very straight FBI agent who gets into his Rhoda's sister, her apartment, and for and she has a crush on me, and she keeps coming back into the room, and then Rhoda comes in to meet me because she hears about anyway. So, but it's a very straight character. And I think I went home that night, smoked a joint, got in the hot tub, and I came up with a concept. I was like, "This is going to be great. I am going to play this guy totally different than what I did today. I'm going in tomorrow, just lights out. I know this is going to work." So I
Right.
go in the next day, and I just take this other tack and I go for it. And it's at a
Right.
run through. it's, all the producers are there, Jim Brooks and all these, all these very famous people, and Tony Mordante was the director, and at the end of it, there wasn't a laugh. There was not a laugh, even the few laughs that I was supposed to get.
Right.
And after it's over, and Tony, the director, comes over and he says, "Tim," said, "What you didn't do that yesterday?" I said, "No, man, I thought maybe I could try this." And he said, "What do you think?" I said, "Nah, it didn't work." He says, "Yeah, no, it doesn't. Just go back to what you did yesterday." But Valerie, and I said to her later, I think while we were rehearsing a scene, I said, "God, I hope I don't get fired. I know here's what I did. I tried this and it didn't work." She goes, "Oh no, if you were going to be fired, you'd be gone by now." And they'd bring John Ritter in. Because what happens was John Ritter was, he was before he was famous John Ritter.
Right.
He was like the utility backup guy that when day 3 came around and the guy who was doing the show wasn't funny, they'd fire him and bring John Ritter in on a day's notice, and then he'd go.
That's crazy. I had no idea.
Yes, but I loved it. She said, no, John Ritter would be here by now if you weren't good. Don't worry about it.
That's fucking amazing, man. Oh my God.
But yeah, we all try. I mean, and you'll try stuff in rehearsals and
yeah.
And it's usually like with Animal House, there were several scenes that I remember doing that I just said, don't touch this.
Yeah.
It's so perfectly written. Don't help it.
Right.
And it was the scene in the courtroom where I'm defending, the fraternity, and you can do what you want to us, but you can't badmouth the United States of America. That scene where it's sort of a courtroom scene,
right.
And then the scene where Otter goes to the Emily Dickinson School for Women and gets a date with the dead girl, because of the dead girl, Fawn Leibowitz, and I just said, don't do anything, just ride this wave, You don't have to help anything here. And it's just so good. And when you're fortunate enough to be aware that the script is that good, then that you can do. I mean, that was what Chevy was like that. I mean, when I did Fletch, Chevy had Michael Ritchie, who was the director, was a wonderful man, and I got to be a friend. He made a deal with Chevy because Chevy sometimes could be a powerhouse on a set and only do it his way.
Right.
And he did a couple of movies that weren't very good after, I think, Vacation.
Yeah.
And so when he got to Fletch, Michael Ritchie made him a deal. He said, "Okay," he said, "we'll do it my way, and then you can do anything you want."
That's brilliant.
But I just want to get it the way it's written, the way it's here, and the way we should do it. And I think that's why it was so good. And also, and to Chevy's credit, he told me when I was doing off camera for his close-ups. He said, "Say the vilest, shittiest, weirdest things you can think of. Try and break me up, cuss me out, whatever I said horrible things to him, just really just vicious, horrible things. And Chevy, because he wanted a real reaction.
Yeah.
And it was to his credit. And I loved working with him.
That's great, man. Somewhere there's that footage out there just waiting to be leaked to the press, like Tim Matheson loses his mind.
Oh my God, the things I said, they were just totally inappropriate. And totally
That's phenomenal, dude. Oh my God. So, I mean, a couple of things in this book too, they're very, very personal. And when you're an outsider and you're reading this kind of stuff, I don't think it always occurs, to the reader, maybe how hard it was. Like, did you have a point in time where you were rewriting this kind of stuff and looking at your past between your parents and then, living with your aunt and stuff like that? Was there moments in the book that were kind of hard to relive, hard to go through for you? And how did you kind of get through that while you were doing it?
Well, yeah, yes. And, because I would soften certain things, I'd say, hey,
Sure.
I was looking at this and I'm talking to the co-writer, Jeffrey Gerard, who helped me, and Jared Hoffman, my business partner. And I'd say, maybe we should soften this. And he says, no, you don't wuss out here. I mean, come on, own it. You screwed it up. My first marriage, I was a horrible husband. I was horrible. I mean, just own it. Be there.
Right.
I was cheating all the time. It was terrible. I'm ashamed of the way I behaved, but I was an idiot.
Sure.
I had no sexual experience, and all of a sudden, I'm married, and it's free love everywhere, and it's like,
Right.
okay, look, why can't I have some of that? So it was not a, but yeah, I think those things are important lessons for me to own, and for my kids to know about, and just for people to know about, also to sort of the credibility of what I'm trying to say here. So it's not just, oh, then this happened, and I was, this cool thing happened and that cool thing happened. It just gets tedious and boring. I mean,
Right.
there were a lot of ups and downs. There were, and I learned from my train wrecks.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that it comes through too. And then, I mean, do you have coping? I mean, obviously everybody has coping mechanisms, stuff like that too. But I'm just curious, like, as far as like, overcoming those kind of things, like it seems like, you plow through, you go through, you're just concentrating on the work. But like you must have had stuff along the way that you had to either reconcile, like, that have affected you to this day, or that you still have to deal with, or that you've learned to deal with. Like, if you don't mind me asking, but what were your coping mechanisms for then versus now, or how you've handled stuff?
I family was very important to me. I did, I probably stayed in a marriage. I was married for 25 years,
Mm,
to my second wife, and um, I did not want to make the mistakes that, or lose my children like my father did. He
right,
left, and I had a very partial relationship with him, and I did not want to be that man. I did not want that to happen to me.
right.
So I think, I I think I worked a
Hmm.
lot. And when I shifted, I got a little older, maybe in my early 50s, and I wasn't playing the younger leading man in all the TV movies, and they weren't doing those films anymore, and there wasn't that much work. That's when I started directing and producing, and
Right.
so I just shifted gears. I mean, I always felt like, and as I look back at it, and I sort of became aware of it, I think in my early 30s, about every 7 years, I went into a different phase of my career.
Yeah.
But you sort of have to reinvent yourself. It's like, who was it who said, uh, I forget who it said, a comic, you'll know. He said, it was probably, oh, I think it was Kennison. He said, once I do a set on the Tonight Show, it's dead. I can never
Yeah.
do that material again. It's
Right.
gone. I'll never use those jokes again.
Right.
So, and it's like that was sort of, I would have to recreate a new act.
Hmm.
And directing for me, um, was sort of that. But I think my coping mechanism was working,
Yeah.
or throwing myself in the deep end, because I didn't know how to direct.
Right.
I didn't go to film school. I mean, I studied film on my own. I loved it.
Hmm.
But you don't, I mean, you may be able to direct certain things, but there's so many elements and different elements, action, and then intimacy, and comedy, and physical comedy, and cards, whatever, that
Yeah.
they're different things. And once you get into a certain part of that, you don't know how to direct that. You
Right.
don't get all the coverage. You don't get what you need. You're behind schedule. So I would just keep challenging myself by, and I was trying to, provide for my family.
Yeah, absolutely. And the cool thing about this too, again, we are talking about the evolutionary process of what you learned as an actor and also as a person, and through people kind of influencing your life too. It definitely shows that, like, I don't remember exactly who had said it, but somebody had told you um n- um to enjoy. Oh God, it's on the tip of my tongue. Who said it? We'll edit it in to make it look like I knew it. Um, this guy. No, but they basically had said to you, don't forget to have a life. Don't forget to enjoy things outside of this. And it was when you were very young. And when, again, what is cool, and I don't know if this was a conscious thing or just, again, this is how your life went. It shows the steps of that. It shows you kind of slowing down and enjoying life and learning from all
Yes,
those
yeah.
mistakes.
I think it was
So it's
Gary Getzman. It was Gary
that's it.
Getzman who was in the first two movies I did, Divorce American Style, played my brother.
Yeah.
Yours, Mine, and Ours, he played my brother. And Gary today is he's Tom Hanks' partner in Playtone, and they've been together for
Yeah.
25 years. And they, Band of Brothers, and Masters of the Air, and
Hmm.
they produced, he's produced to Stop Making Sense, and worked with Jonathan Demme, and
Yeah.
Silence of the Lambs. So I mean, he's the one who said, you got to have fun. You just,
Yeah.
it's supposed to be fun. and you know, and you know, when I worked with like Mel Brooks and Anne Bancroft, they always had even Mel could be so over passionate and crazed about things. He walked in the middle of a rehearsal, and he wasn't even directing to be or not to be. He was starring in it and wrote it. And Anne and Charlie Durning were doing a scene, and Alan Johnson, the director, was there, and they were in the middle of rehearsing it, and they were doing what they wanted to do, and they were getting ready to shoot it. And Mel goes, no, hold on. I think what you should do is you should try this, do this, and do that. And Anne. Tough Italian broad from Jersey said, "So hold on, everybody. I want to point out something here. Mel Brooks is trying to tell Oscar nominee Charles Durning and Oscar winner Anne Bancroft how to act." And everybody just broke up. And then Mel goes, "All right, do whatever you want to do." And then he left. But I mean, that was the way they dealt with it, you know.
Yeah.
You can get away with murder if you can make them laugh.
Oh my God, that is fucking genius, though.
Oh God.
Oh man. And then one of the things I loved about your character on The West Wing is, one, I wanted to see him more, but I'm very curious because this is the kind of thing that you look for in a character too, when they're playing what you feel like is two different emotions at the same time. And I know you'll know exactly what I'm talking about too. But well, you did it. Of course you would. So answered my own question. So when you're when you were doing that, there were times when you'd be presented with a problem as a vice president on that show, and you could tell without you even saying anything that there was an ego to the character, that he was like, this wouldn't be a problem that they're coming with right now if I was president of the United States.
Damn
I felt like that always, felt like that always came through. But then there was the morality of the character, which was, I'm always going to do what is best for the country and my job and what I know is right. Loved the way you played that. Did you get that from, because I know you did a bunch of research on vice presidents and something like that too. Was there somebody that you modeled it, a vice president in particular, or was that your own experience? Like, where did you get that to play that character?
It was Doris Kearns Goodwin wrote a bio of LBJ, and when I got there to the set, Dee Dee Myers and Pat. Oh gosh, I forget Pat's last name. Anyway, they were press aides to the former President Clinton, I think, and they said, "You're LBJ, and he's JFK, and you should be in that seat. I mean, you're the pro." Mm-hmm. He got lucky. He just he lucked out, and it was really that we modeled it after, and it was sadly they wouldn't let me be a good guy. I remember when I was, Aaron called me one day in the fourth season, near the end of the fourth season, and he and Tommy Schlamme, his partner, called me and said, "Tim, we're leaving the show, and so are you." And I said, "What's going on?" And he said, "Well, you're going to have an affair that comes out and in your past, and you're going to resign so that John Goodman can come over and be, the Speaker of the House when the president gets ill." And I said, "Oh, okay." And I remember, and it was Matthew Perry who was in that episode too. He was a lovely man. And I had a moment where I just was looking out of the window, a private moment where I was just realizing it was gone. It was over for me, and I just started to choke up, and I started to get emotional, and we did this. We did the shot, and I thought it was great because it was, I felt choked up about blowing my chance,
Right.
And they said, no, let's do it again. Don't get so emotional. They didn't want, they didn't want too much humanity, I don't think, with a character. And listen, I trusted them implicitly with everything. And I never, Bradley Whitford used to say, the vice president is a heartbeat away from the Oval Office, and Tim Matheson is a heartbeat away from being a regular on the West Wing. And it was like that, and it was fun to be there, and it was fun to
Right.
work with all those people, and especially John Spencer. He was he and I got along.
Yeah. Yeah, Leo McGarry, man, he was
Ah,
like, oh god, talk about morality on that show, man. That guy was like,
yeah.
it really. I mean, I rewatched. This is going to be a real nerd moment here, but I rewatched that show, just the whole season. I did it like at least once a year. I would just go back,
Wow.
especially during you know, the writing is so good, but you miss those like. I remember the first time. My mom's a huge fan of yours, by the way. So if I didn't
Oh,
mention that, that would like, I mean, like when it's one of those things where you're
thank her
just
for me.
happy. I absolutely will. But I was like, oh man, I always tell her when, if somebody's coming on the show or whatever, I'm like, oh yeah, Tim Matheson's coming on. She was like, get the fuck out, like just like, are you? And then literally was just naming things you had been, and then she
Oh my
called her
God.
sister, and then she like, so but like, the first time she had watched it, she didn't watch it for some reason. It was on the air. I don't know why. But then I was like, you have to see this show. Then loved that you were in it. And then on top of that, like it ended, and my mom was like, I keep thinking about these people every day. Like they're and I'm like, welcome to my world. Like we had such an affinity for all those characters. So it just
Yes,
really,
yes.
and plus around this time too, like it's just like, it's nice to see people who are, even though it's fictional, I'm aware, but like it is nice to see people who feel like, their government's running smoothly and all that other stuff too. What's cool is like you talk about, your grandmother who was extremely liberal for her time, and I don't know if you've noticed, but I also identify as liberal. Uh, but I was thinking about that. I don't know if you can tell by just literally everything about me.
Just a hint.
Just a hint, right? Not overkill at all with the jacket, and the hair. But it's funny too because I was before I did this, I was riding my bike, and I live in LBI, New Jersey, and it's a predominantly I live in somewhat of a Trump area, right? So I'm riding the bike, and I swallow a bug. And not only is that not bad enough, but I like try to like hack it up and keep riding. And then I realized, oh my God, it's in my throat. And I literally started to gag.
Oh,
I had to
geez.
stop biking and then like literally try to get it. But then I thought, I'm in, like, this is again Trump area. I'm in front of somebody's house. I'm doubled over, and all I could think was I'm gonna get recorded on some Ring camera, and they're gonna be like, "Local liberal cuck comedian can't handle." And the worst part about it, I was like, "They're right. I couldn't handle swallowing a bug. I was bent, doubled over." So it's such a weird. I don't even know what, but like it's a weird time that is in your conscience. Where I feel like,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
my question, but though to you is because you have had your hand in politics. You worked on a show that is involved in that kind of stuff too. Do you feel like this period of time is any different than what you guys felt in the 60s and 70s when you're going through all that? You were in the Marines, that kind of stuff, or is my generation just losing their fucking minds because of social media? You know what I mean? Like
I
it's
think
very
social
hard for me
media
to
has a lot
parse.
to do with it, but I'll tell you
Yeah,
what I was anti-war. I mean,
I know. I
and
love that.
yet I learned so much by being in the United States Marine Corps, and
Right.
I it taught me a lot about myself, about service, about love of country, and it made me aware of the greatest generation and the men and women who gave their all in their lives and their health to fight against evil in World War I and II.
Hmm.
And I think that's gone. And I
Yeah.
think it's a shame that there's a section of this country that thinks getting an AR-14 or it makes them, that's their military service, that they're playing at being in the military rather than
Right.
having served. And what is service if it's Peace Corps, if it's 2 years of helping out in a school, if it's 2 years cleaning up a road or something, if there was just giving to your country, uniting us as brothers and sisters together. I mean, I feel that kinship with the Marine Corps because that's what I endured that with people my age, going through boot
Hmm.
camp, going through service. and I revere what they did and the price they paid.
Yeah.
And now it's all somebody stands up at a ball game or a football game and you give them a round of applause because there's the veteran of the day. That's what service is today. You give them
Yes.
a round of applause at a football game or a baseball game.
Right.
I think and very few people, I think of it as service as something noble, or think about our country as something that you owe to.
Hmm.
And I think that's the thing that I've become aware of, and I wish that there was more of. And there are certain politicians who have served their country,
Yeah.
and not all of them. A couple that remain nameless, but that don't honor that service
Agreed.
by certain actions they've taken. But how do you storm the Capitol? I mean, that's them playing military. That's
Yeah.
I mean, that's not the way it works.
Right.
So I think that's what's happened, and it's sort of put on steroids because of social media. I mean, I got off of social media because I was like the guy yelling at "Get off my lawn." I thought it was really important that I get out there and tell
Yes.
people what I thought about politics. And then I realized it doesn't matter.
Right.
It's not important for me to do that. It's better for me to just mind my own business and place my votes, send my money, support my candidates, and do that. It's not important for me to get out there and do and yell in the ether what I think's right and wrong, or try and make jokes about uh,
Right.
any of these people. But I think to me that's the difference, is that there is not that love of country and service and to your country
Yeah.
that there used to be.
Yeah.
I see that missing, and I see a lot of people.
Yeah, my stepdad I mean, he passed away in 2018, but he served in Vietnam. He actually passed away from Agent Orange. What wound
Ah,
up exposure? What
I'm
wound up?
sorry.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Yeah, it was and it was, but he was always very like he didn't want he wasn't a like a bumper sticker guy for that kind of stuff. He didn't fly a flag outside. He almost didn't even really want any kind of you know compensation or extra treatment for it. He did his job. He served his country. He was proud to do
Yeah,
it. And he was happy to do it. And
we
he
owe
was
it.
yes, yes. And he was a staunch Republican. And I say that with love and respect, because he and I could always talk about anything that was going on. I mean, it's to the point where I even remember I got him to vote for Obama when it was going on and stuff like that, because we just had these discussions. But
Oh,
he
that's
was
wonderful.
bewildered by the flip side of that, because he was still around when Trump had first gotten elected, but he couldn't wrap his head around a guy, we were just kind of talking about a guy with lack of service, like all that other stuff, who has a really weird reaction to Gold Star. Like he was like, I don't understand the disconnect. And it was such a, weird thing to have to see and go through, watching it through somebody else's point of view who had served. So it was just
Yes.
bizarre. And it's even, but it is funny. Like you say, the social media thing too, like you are screaming into the ether and it feels effective at first. And then you realize it's just as bad as any fucking drug or anything else. Cause you're like, I'm not getting
Absolutely.
anywhere, and now my heart rate's weird. Like you're just like, what did I do?
Yeah.
It's so insane. But that's what we're all kind of going through too. And it's just crazy and insane. And I just don't know, like, you know, uh, I almost envy you get like not you guys. I would say you guys, like, you guys didn't have a hard time with the acting and stuff like that too. But like, my friends and I talk about the fact that we have to become content creators as
Yeah.
opposed to just doing our art. And then it's like you parse that with everything I read in your book, where you're talking about how this is a business and how dedicated to the business you have to be and understand it in a certain way. So then as I'm reading this, I'm thinking like, is now unfortunately, yeah, social media is part of the business, but holy shit, I feel like less of an artist sometimes because I'm trapped in this world and thing too. Do you ever go like, thank God I don't have to to do
Oh,
that today?
absolutely. No,
Yeah.
I'm not good at it. I mean, it's
You don't
you know,
TikTok dance.
I embrace it and have counselors help me with it, because it's a it's you have to be out there. It's sort of, because people don't read magazines anymore. It's sort of, it's a
Right.
visual form of reaching out, and it's important, I think, to reach out to the people who appreciate your work.
Hmm.
It's a way to connect with your audience. I mean, that's really what it's about, to me. And if you can draw people to, it's like the Tonight Show. It's like doing, so it's like that, which
Yeah.
you're inviting people to come maybe and share in what your craft is and your art is, if it can, rise to that level.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree completely. It's a weird kind of, it's an unfortunate necessity, but it's absolutely a necessity, which
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
struggling with at the point. Um, are you? I really am, dude. You have like, I'm like going through like some weird time in my career, which who isn't, you know what I mean? But also, again, these kind of conversations and these kind of books always lift you up and like kind of help you out too, because you're like, it's just part of the process. If you love the thing that you do and you love the art, man, you just got to go through it and you'll be okay. And
Yeah, because that's why we all do it. You do it so you can get up. I mean, you make people laugh. You brighten
yeah,
up their day. And that's a gift that not everybody or very few people have,
right.
and it's a special quality.
Yeah. Yeah. I just have to remind myself that. I'm going to play what you just said to me over and over again as a mantra now for the next month. It'll carry me through. Uh,
Great, great.
are you good at like, because you had like all these guys all the way through, Lucille Ball, Dick Van Dyke and everything. Were you good at keeping in touch? Did you, you know, um, ever get to tell any of these people like kind of what they meant to you over the years? Like, how are you with, you know, crossing those boundaries? Are you good at that?
Well, a couple people. I mean, Reba McEntire taught me so much about respect and honoring your fans.
Hmm.
I mean, the country world, the country western artists will do a 2.5 hour show and then spend 3 hours signing autographs, taking pictures after the show.
Right.
And if someone stops them on the street, they talk to them and they engage and they'll take a picture and listen to them and so I've stayed in touch with Reba and Mel. I've communicated with several times, Mel Brooks,
Uh-huh.
and yeah, and it's but not, because it's this crazy world where you're so close and engaged with somebody in a family like world for your time together making a movie or a TV show, and then poof, just goes
Then
away.
gone.
And yes, you do, but then you're off in London and I'm off in Brussels and or Toronto or Atlanta or Vancouver, and so it's hard to connect and stay in touch.
Right.
And but yes, I try and reach out to people that have affected my life and elevated my life and to constantly thank them
Mm.
and stay in touch.
That's incredibly healthy, dude. I like that because it's one of those things where like I've had like a, like you always feel like I always feel like a kid. I don't know why. I'm not. I'm gonna be 40 in November. You know what I mean? Like, but it is those things of like
That is a
I
kid,
get.
let me tell you.
Oh, thank God. Because it is one of those things like I get to meet these people and I work with these people, and you always feel like you're just tugging on because you know them, you see them forever, and they're your heroes, and then now, but you're in like an environment where you're now peers. But you know what I mean? But you got to keep it like, level headed and whatever. But in the meantime, I'm still screaming in my head, like, holy fucking shit. You know, it's so weird. It's bizarre to me. But it is one of the coolest things that I think you also like. This is what I love when things cross over is that you got to be around the talking heads when you were, which has got to be. I had Jerry Harrison on recently, and
Yeah.
that was another one of those things where I was like, oh my God, I got to ask him a million questions. But like, you got to be there for like a monumental, you know, moment in their career too.
Oh my
So that,
God.
like, how was that? What was that like at the time? Were you like processing that?
It was I was there because of Gary Getzman and Jonathan Demme, who I knew, and so I
Hmm.
was watching this show being filmed
Hmm.
at the Pantages Theater in Los Angeles, and I just was trying to process how crazy this was. I mean,
Right.
I'd not seen the Talking Heads. I'd heard them, but
Hmm.
and then, David Byrne is so such a genius and so crazy.
Yeah.
And, I, but I didn't know it was going to have the impact that it did, and then, I mean, it transformed. I just thought, oh, it's going to be one of those, recordings of a performance, but it wasn't. It was so much more because Jonathan Demme was such a great fan of music and also of cinema, and he equaled what David Byrne was doing and presented it in such a way that
Right.
it really it doubled the impact of it. It wasn't just a photograph or a recording of a performance. It
Wow.
embellished it, and I don't think we've seen a lot like that.
Yeah.
And but it was so special. And Gary Gessman he was just there. Yeah, man, we're doing it. Yeah, come on to the party. He was just as casual as he always is, and just
Yeah.
having fun with it. And it was interesting because he hired the cinematographer at the time was Jordan Cronworth, and Jordy was huge at the time, but
Hmm.
he'd been the camera operator on Divorce American Style for Conrad Hall, who was a huge Connie Hall shot Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. He was a
Yeah.
genius cinematographer, and Jordy was his operator. And now Jordy was promoted to cinematographer, and Gary, the kid who was 13 at the time we first met, now brings him in to be the cinematographer on Stop Making Sense. So
Right.
it was amazing to me how this family just kept going around and around, and all these sort of ends came together, and Gary, he did he worked with Norman Lear. Norman Lear produced Divorce American Style. So, and Gary, I think, did a documentary on Norman, or put together an event for Norman's life
Wow.
achievement award or something, and got very close to him, and on a whole different level,
Yeah.
in recent years. So it was just, it's a small town we live in, and getting smaller, I think,
Yeah.
and um, but it it is my family. I did
Hmm.
find my family, and I found it's a handmade business. It's
Yeah.
much like what you do. It's not anything AI could generate. It's not anything that could be manufactured by machinery or anything.
Right.
It's a handcrafted business. Film
Yeah.
is, whether it's TV, movies, or whatever.
Hmm.
And so any performance is handcrafted.
Yeah. Do you worry about AI?
I don't know. I no. I mean, I guess it's a tool. I I a year or so ago, I was my daughter's really into that world, and her husband, they live up in Silicon Valley, and
Nice.
they're in that world, and they're so smart about it all.
Right.
But it's like, yeah, to save you time. It's like, oh, there's some commercial I saw on TV where somebody said, uh, synthesize this, synthesize, here's 50 pages, synthesize it down to 9 minutes, and the top 10 talking points.
Right.
And it's like, okay, all right, maybe that's handy, but you can do that yourself.
Yeah.
If you really understand, a good teacher, a great teacher makes the complex subjects simple. And I don't know that I want to see AI
That's a
do
great
that.
point.
I want to
Right.
I want the great teacher,
Yeah. Oh
and
my God. I love that you just said that. Like, that is like the thing that's on my mind constantly, because I have teachers that I still love and kept in touch with. And my friends and I, to this day, I don't think a conversation goes by where we're talking about a subject and then don't go back to, yeah, you know where that came from? Mr. and Mrs. Smith, who literally is the Smiths, like, who I'm like, without them at the time, I don't know that we would have been shaped the way we were shaped. And it's because they got to, you know, bring their personalities
yeah,
into their work, into their teaching. So you
yes,
got the raw deal, which I feel like sometimes this kind of stuff, like, it's almost limited now. Where, like, one of my friends actually quit teaching because they were working in a school where they had monitors going around and watching the clock and being like, you know what, you're done with this subject. You need to move on to the next one. But they'd be like, oh, but this student needs just help. I'm just going over it. Nope, you're done teaching this, move on to the next topic. And they had to almost do it by like a script. And he was like, this is not why I became, and he had to piece. It was
Yeah.
getting crazy, but it's so weird. The individuality of a teacher is kind of like MIA now.
Yeah, it's hard. Somebody was telling me, what were they talking about? There was a phrase he was using that you have to triggering. Was it triggering? If you
Triggering, yeah.
show a film, I'm going to show a film in class, and it triggers people. It triggers people, and you can't show that film because it triggers people. It triggers this and certain people that. And I
Yeah.
just said, well, then leave.
Right.
Then walk out of. Okay, just say this. It's like all these little disclaimers at the beginning of a show. This may be there's sexual content. There's people smoking cigarettes. There's violence. There's blah 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 blah. If this
Yeah.
is affects you, then leave.
Yes.
But I don't.
I agree with
What kills me is you call up somebody on the phone and you get some robot voice that says, like I don't know how to leave a message, right? So it's like I get a robot voice that says, so no one can answer your phone right now, and it's like, why not just have a real voice? If it's so
Yeah.
friggin' good, why not create a voice that sounds like a real person?
Yeah, man.
Or leave your own. I put your own. Leave a message. I could say that.
And especially when it's a small business, it's your business, man. Leave the voicemail there. It's insane to me that you can't get a real person on. I've literally, I think they have more recordings of me losing my mind on a robot. I could, when I'm like, what the fuck, agent, just freaking out because you're
Right.
like, isn't anybody, this is the thing that I love about this kind of stuff, because they'll be like, 14 million jobs created, whatever, whoever's in charge, whether the president is or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, are there though? Because there's still nobody answering the phone at CBS.
No, they're in Mumbai, or
Right.
the guy there. Somebody was telling me who worked at Warner Brothers that they've outsourced accounting and they've outsourced some other department.
Yep.
Someone to Mexico City and then one to India.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I guess that looks good on paper.
Right.
But what does that do to the family telling the stories of these movies, or what does that do to the heart of this business that you're building?
Yeah.
I worry about that. Everything is not just the bottom line.
No, I agree. And that's the most frustrating thing to me. Obviously, you vote because, we all talk about that. Sorry, I'm not trying to dip into politics all the time either. But I'm just saying, you vote a certain way, you do that kind of stuff because you can move the mark a little bit better. People are trying to be progressive and stuff. But at the crux of it, I have a hard time, not trying to sympathize with people who are just in the middle class or struggling or trying to earn a living or doing that kind of a thing, where you're like, I understand why there's confusion with that. There's confusion within me. And I like to think of relatively intelligent person who I'm just like, yeah, if I can't see it from day to day either, consciously, okay, this is obviously what needs to be done. The difference between right and wrong. But at the same time, I don't blame people who can't feel it because they can't see it because they're trying to do 50 million things at once. And you can the thing that I think sometimes is so funny between the disconnect between, like you were saying, people who scream into the ether or whatever is, I see it all the time where it'll be like a popular celebrity or whatever it is, and they'll be like, how could people think this when they see this? And they'll show a graph, and I'm like, I'm sorry, people don't have time to look at fucking graphs. You know what I mean? I barely understand what you're showing me right now. Like, are you out of your mind? They're juggling, they're trying to get their kids to school, they're trying to get they have to carry, it's like, of course they don't give a it's insane. It's it drives me, that shit drives me crazy. And I loved what you said about the trigger warning thing too, because I completely agree to me, I'm all for, like you said, you got to leave the room. And I'm all for, I understand if something upsets somebody, nobody wants to upset anybody. But at the same time, when you're growing up, how do you, if you're not exposed, if everything you're going to be exposed to comes with a warning, I think it sets something off in your brain that automatically goes, I may not like this, I'm going to be uncomfortable, without actually just getting to experiencing it and deciding.
Get uncomfortable. What? So
Yes!
what? You're uncomfortable.
Agreed.
You know what?
Exactly.
It's supposed to make you uncomfortable. Maybe look at Psycho.
Yeah. Oh my God.
You
Yeah.
look at,
Exactly.
I remember seeing Psycho. I had nightmares. I remember going on location to Utah and staying in a motel room, and it was like, I can't take a shower in this room.
Absolutely.
And I'm a grown up.
Jaws, which Yeah, I love Jaws. I don't know where the button. I'm a Jaws. I could quote you that. I could do that whole movie right now for you. I won't, but I
Oh,
could. Love that movie. But when I was a
yeah.
kid, I was in California and I got knocked down by a wave. I was
Uh-oh.
like 5. I thought it was a shark. I hauled ass. I screamed shark and ran. My father had to chase me down before I got to the highway because I was like, just
Oh,
like,
that's too funny.
yeah. And I'm fine now. I love that movie. I could quote that movie all day long.
You know what was so funny? I forget, Gus Van Sant, I think, did it. They did it at Universal, thinking this was a brilliant idea. I think it was, I forget what producer did it. They remade Psycho shot for shot, again with
Wow.
different cast,
Right. Oh, yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
it was not well received, and it was like for numerous reasons. But they shot it in color, and the reason that Hitchcock shot it in black and white was so the blood wouldn't be so violent. Because when you killed Janet Leigh, when you killed the leading lady 25 minutes or 30 minutes into the movie,
Right.
you didn't want to see red blood, and because that would have wiped the audience, would have left.
Right,
So I
right.
mean, that's how smart he was.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's okay. There's ways to tell a story. There's ways to do it, and doing it shot for shot. I don't. That's the dumbest thing I ever heard of. But because you got a whole new cast,
Yeah,
it's like
yeah.
those aren't the right people. I mean, it's like
No,
you're going to change that. What else? Why not change the shot? I don't.
exactly. Yeah. Do something new with it, for fuck's sakes. No, I agree. Um, I can't thank you enough for staying on with me for this. I feel like
This
I
has
could.
been so much fun. It's been my
Oh,
treat. Thank you very
yeah.
much.
Oh my God. Thank you,
I
man.
love
It's been
this
an
stuff.
honor.
I
I
love
want to
this.
ask you the last 3 questions that I ask every guest that's been on the
Okay.
show. So first one's sort of a softball question, but the first question is, if you go back in time and talk to your younger self, what piece of advice would you give yourself to help you today?
Um, um, don't ever cheat on a girlfriend.
Ooh, good advice. I think that's the first person that's ever said that. That's a great piece of advice. Second question is, what had to end in your life, good or bad, that led you to where you are today?
Um, gosh, allowing people who were not my friends, or didn't have, um, who didn't care for me enough, who weren't my friends, to be around me, to lose all the people who weren't really my friends.
Wow. That's extremely hard to do. I totally
Yeah.
understand that. Um, did it, was it a long process
Oh
to
yeah.
do that? Yeah.
Oh yeah, and I think it even went through my marriage. I mean, just because I'm not going to be my dad. I'm not walking out on this because I
Right.
got the kids. And then you hang around and you take, and then certain things happen, and then it's like, finally, wake up. You don't have to, this is not a good thing for you.
Yeah.
So it's over.
Yeah.
And I talk about that in the book. I mean, I didn't get
Yes.
into too much detail because it's not, I don't want, it's not fair. And I try to keep my personal family, the kids stuff. I try to keep that out of it, because we
Mhm.
try to keep them away from the
Sure.
public stuff. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think I had too many people around me for too long.
Yeah.
Even as I got older, I remember going to, there was around a friend of mine with my sister, in the last 15 years. A guy had been in my life my whole life. I grew up with him, and my sister and my now wife Elizabeth said, "He's not very nice to you. He's just not
Right.
nice to you." And as I started, really, he'd never been nice to me, but he
Right.
was family. So I finally just, let go of it.
It's such a weird thing, like, to parse too, because um, I have I have like a genuine. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but I have a genuine loyalty thing when it comes to like my friends, and like if you even ask them, I'm confident they would say the same thing, like whatever. And I don't know that it's because of like weird issues with my dad or whatever it was. I'm not sure. I've really thought about it that much, but it does feel. I've always felt this, like losing a friendship or having to let go of a friendship is almost equal to a death, because if they've grown up with you, these
Yep.
people have a part of your life that you almost need them to be there for to remind yourself. You know what I mean? Like it's almost
Yep.
like they carry a thing with them. So I can't imagine what that's like to have to go through, having to deal with that. I mean, I can't like it's happened to me, but
Well, we
it's
just
so fucking
ignore it.
hard.
We ignore it, you know? I don't know,
Right.
and there's something in it. You're getting something out of the relationship, but at what cost, I think, you
Yes,
know?
absolutely. Okay, and the last question ties into the theme of the show. This is totally a goofball question, so answer it however you want. So, the show's called Dystopia Tonight. If you wake up tomorrow, it's you find out last day on Earth for everybody. You got 24 hours left to kill. What do you think? What would you think would be happening? Do you think it would be political collapse, climate change, a comet, zombies, aliens? Your choice. Whatever bizarre thing you want to be causing the end. And what's your epic death? How you going out?
Um, I think it would probably be the Big Bang, you know, like a meteor strikes and
Cool.
you know, like it did supposedly with the dinosaurs.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that the planet might just be better off without us, you know, sometimes.
Going the Kurt Vonnegut route. I like that. That's pretty
Yeah, that's
cool.
it. That's right.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Yeah, I always used to love when he would come on TV and be like, "We're done. We don't need to be." like, I mean, like, I was always like, 15. I'm like, Jesus Christ, guy, fucking calm down. I'm just starting to fuck for God's sake,
We're due to become extinct, you know.
Absolutely, yeah.
We yeah.
I love that attitude, man. Again, thank you so much, dude. I just really appreciate your time, your book,
Man, I love it.
sending it
Thank
to
you,
me.
John.
Yeah.
Dystopia Tonight.